Welcome to our channel where tonight's tale will shake you to your very core. Imagine giving everything to your family, only to be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. This is Eleanor Reed's shocking reality when she returns from vacation to find her suitcases lined up on the sidewalk outside her own home, the very home she's still paying for. After 32 years of memories and 2 years of faithfully writing mortgage checks after her husband's death, Eleanor discovers the brutal truth her son Michael and daughter-in-law Olivia have relegated her to the garage while planning to sell her beloved home from under her. But Eleanor's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens when a woman who's been invisible decides to finally be seen. What follows is a masterclass in quiet strength as Eleanor transforms from a discarded mother to a formidable force. When her son's financial house of cards begins to collapse, will Eleanor choose revenge or redemption? The final confrontation will leave you breathless. If you've ever felt taken for granted or wondered if it's too late to reclaim your power, Eleanor's journey will inspire you to your core. This isn't just a story about elder abuse. It's about discovering that your greatest chapter might begin precisely when others think your story is over. Subscribe now for more soul-stirring tales and share in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took advantage of your kindness? Where are you listening from tonight? Now, settle in as we witness how one woman's courage changes everything. "You lied to me all this time," I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls of the living room where sunbeams slipped through sheer curtains. My short, wavy silver hair, practical and neat after decades of teaching, shook with the force of my disbelief. I could practically feel my blood pounding in my ears as I glared at my adult son, Cedric, who stood rooted to the spot. Only days earlier, I had discovered the bitter truth. The $4,000 I handed over monthly from my pension was not, in fact, going into my grandson Toby's tuition, after-school classes, or anything that remotely benefited that precious child. Instead, Cedric had been funneling the money to his wife, Marissa, who gleefully blew it on high-end indulgences like a fresh Louis Vuitton bag. I'm Harriet Lawson, a 68-year-old retired middle school teacher from San Francisco. For nearly 3 decades, I dedicated my life to nurturing young minds, stashing away every spare cent into savings and eventually securing a steady pension that amounted to around $5,600 a month. Cedric, my only son, had always looked up to me, or so I believed. When my husband passed away over 30 years ago, leaving me to bring up a little boy all on my own, I tried to be both mother and father. I taught Cedric the value of honesty, hard work, and compassion. My short, wavy hair became something of a trademark practical for a woman working around kids and leading parent-teacher conferences. But life took its twists and turns, and Cedric eventually married Marissa, a woman who flaunted her swirling chestnut locks in elaborate styles that looked straight out of a Hollywood spread. She claimed it was part of her self-care routine to maintain that glamorous waist-length hair in perfect condition, an odd priority considering how often she also lamented the family's supposed financial strain. The two of them, together with my grandson Toby, who wore a trendy little spiky hairstyle that Marissa insisted made him look cooler, moved into my old house, the place my late husband and I had purchased decades ago. For a time, I truly believed we were a happy 3-generation household. Then came the day I learned the devastating truth: I was being used, betrayed, and Toby, the sweet, bright boy who waved his arms for me every day after school, he was just a tiny pawn in their deceit. It all unraveled one sunny afternoon at the mall. I had gone to pick out some new sneakers for Toby, believing he needed them for gym class. Imagine my shock when I stumbled upon Marissa's mother, Lillian Gomez, A woman who wore her platinum hair teased high in an extravagant bouffant, like a star from a bygone movie era. I'd always found her a bit ostentatious, but I tried to keep the peace for Toby's sake. That day, however, she didn't see me lurking behind a pillar in the department store as she loudly bragged about Marissa's latest windfall. All thanks to Harriet's gullibility, Lillian boasted to a friend, her voice ringing out even over the store's busy hum. She clutched a flashy designer purse in her manicured hands. That woman forks over $4,000 every month, thinking it's all going toward Toby's education. Huh, if only she knew that Marissa and Cedric bought me this LV bag just last week. They're spoiling me like queens. Her throaty laugh sparked a cold sensation in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't breathe. All the oxygen seemed to evaporate from the store, leaving me lightheaded and numb. The reality was like a hammer blow. The money I had earmarked for Toby's private tutoring, daycare programs, and extracurriculars was being spent on high-end handbags and, as it turned out, even glitzy gifts for Lillian herself. I'd never been so humiliated, used, and mocked by my own daughter-in-law and her mother, people I had welcomed under my roof. I left the mall without buying Toby anything, feeling a mixture of betrayal and outrage. My mind spun as I recalled how many times Cedric and Marissa had come to me, claiming times were tough, that Toby's school needed new fees, or that he needed specialized art classes or sports gear. I never asked for receipts. I trusted them completely. Why would my own family lie about a child's future? Toby was the love of my life. I was the one who dropped him off and picked him up from school, who read bedtime stories and made sure he had an afternoon snack. But the next phase of this sickening discovery hit even harder. My poor Toby wasn't just missing out on the money meant for his education. He was often left stranded after school, waiting in tears for someone to show up. A few days after that fateful mall encounter, I ran into Lillian again, purely by chance, but this time in a grocery store checkout line. She had an overstuffed shopping cart full of premium steaks, imported fruits, and champagne bottles. It was only 2 p.m., and she made a snide comment about her late lunch party. I forced a polite smile, though my stomach churned. Suddenly, I recalled the conversation I'd overheard and couldn't resist following her outside. Hidden behind the trunk of an old maple tree, I watched as she loaded her trunk, and there, on the top of her groceries, sat a brand new Louis Vuitton box, still sealed. Ridiculous, I muttered under my breath, an ember of anger kindling in my chest. I thought of Toby, the little boy with a bright smile, sporting his spiky hair that Marissa insisted on styling every morning. How often had I seen him at school, munching on the same battered lunch bag day after day. He never complained, but there were times he confided in me that he wished he had fresh fruit or some fun snack like the other kids. Meanwhile, Lillian and Marissa flaunted a $4,000 monthly allowance as if it were a golden ticket to a carefree life. That same evening, I confronted Cedric quietly in the living room. His hair, cropped short and parted in the middle, was ruffled from a long day at work. He was an engineer by trade, always with a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. I remembered how I'd saved up to send him to college after my husband's death, working extra tutoring jobs to pay the tuition. I asked him point blank, "Are you truly using my money for Toby's schooling?" His eyes darted away, brimming with guilt. He tried to stammer something about unexpected expenses, but never looked me directly in the face. That was all the confirmation I needed, over and over. Marissa had whined about Toby's so-called piano lessons, painting classes, or soccer registration fees. She even claimed to buy Toby new textbooks from specialized learning centers. Yet, each evening, I never saw Toby reading anything beyond the school's standard books. It felt as though the ground had crumbled beneath my feet. leaving me suspended in a pit of confusion and betrayal. I was furious, but also heartbroken. I cried myself to sleep that night, my pillow damp from tears of anger and disillusionment. I couldn't accept that my own son, the one I raised from infancy, would conspire with his wife to cheat me out of my pension, especially under the pretense of helping Toby. The next morning, I resolved to find out the full truth. I refused to confront Marissa directly just yet. I wanted ironclad evidence of their lies. While Cedric left for work and Marissa napped, she often claimed she was too exhausted to do household chores. I made a few phone calls. First, I confirmed with Toby's elementary school that I was indeed listed as the primary contact for everything. Then I asked the front office about the after-school enrichment programs Toby was supposedly enrolled in. The secretary on the phone sounded puzzled. Toby had only the standard after-school care, the kind included in a small monthly fee, and I had been paying that fee myself, in person, for almost a year. In the afternoon, I deliberately told Marissa I was meeting an old friend for lunch, so I wouldn't be around to pick up Toby at 300. She swished her long chestnut hair away from her eyes, scowling slightly, but eventually muttered, "Fine." With that, I left home earlier than usual, found a discreet bench near Toby's school, and waited. Sure enough, 300 p.m. rolled around. The gates opened, and a stream of kids spilled out. Toby, in his little navy hoodie, lingered near the fence, scanning faces for a familiar one. Marissa was nowhere to be seen. My heart clenched as each minute dragged by 5, 10, 15 minutes. Parents collected their children, hugging them close. Toby's bright eyes turned dull when he saw no one had come. Eventually, he started walking, backpack bouncing on his small shoulders, his spiky hair visible from behind as he trudged alone down the sidewalk. I followed at a distance, alarmed by how close the traffic roared, how easily a child that size could be lost or harmed in a city this large. My own heart hammered in fear just imagining the danger, and I realized the horrifying truth. They'd never planned to pick him up. As I trailed Toby, who nervously navigated crosswalks by counting out loud, I recalled the day he'd shown me a drawing of our family. He'd drawn my silver waves with bright crayons, labeling me Grandma Harriet, and gave Marissa a sweeping swirl of brown hair. Cedric had a short, tidy style, and Toby had scribbled his own spiky cut in that adorable, childlike way. Below it, he'd written, "I love my family." My chest felt tight. Seeing him walk alone, so vulnerable, shattered my heart more than any personal betrayal ever could. I caught up to him quickly. "Toby," I called out softly. He turned, a spark of relief lighting up his face, but it quickly vanished. "Grandma, where's Mom?" he asked. His voice trembled just a bit. My throat constricted. "She was busy," I managed, blinking back tears. "Come on, sweetheart, let me take you home." When we arrived, Marissa was sprawled on the couch in designer pajamas, flipping through her phone with freshly painted nails. She had that glossy, expensive blowout in her hair, the kind you get after several hours at a high-end salon. Toby ran to his bedroom without a word. I stood there, my pulse pounding. "You left him at school?" I asked in a shaky breath. Marissa lazily turned her head. "He's old enough to walk." "Harriet, don't fuss." Her tone was dismissive, as if Toby's safety was just a minor detail. Fury simmered in me, but I knew I had to remain calm. Exploding now would only let her see the depth of my anger. Instead, I made the choice to gather more proof I could use not just to stop their financial leeching, but to protect Toby. Over the coming days, I stayed up late, scouring our financial statements. My monthly $4,000 deposits, made in cash, were impossible to trace once Marissa took them, but I had receipts for Toby's real after-school fees, groceries, and everything else. None of it added up to anywhere close to 4,000. That's when I decided to confide in my closest friend, Celeste Donovan, a retired teacher like me, known for her curly salt and pepper hair and no-nonsense attitude. Celeste had always been the type to spot the truth behind people's facades, and I desperately needed her perspective. I invited Celeste over one Saturday morning. We sat at my small kitchen table, nursing hot cups of tea while Toby played quietly in the living room. Celeste listened carefully as I laid out every sordid detail: how I discovered the truth at the mall, the financial statements, Toby's lonely walk home, Marissa's obsession with luxury. With each revelation, Celeste's sharp eyes narrowed in outrage. "Harriet," she said, her curly hair bouncing with emphasis, "you have more than enough here to stop this nonsense. Gather your evidence, stand firm, and protect yourself and Toby." Still, a part of me clung to the hope that Cedric, my own flesh and blood, would snap out of this. Maybe he'd be remorseful enough to fix things. But Celeste gently reminded me that sometimes tough love is necessary. He's an adult, Harriet. If he won't stand up for his own child's well-being, then you must. Just then, Toby wandered over, looking for a snack. Before I could stand, Celeste patted my hand and rose to help him. She returned, eyebrows furrowed, whispering, "He barely has decent groceries in there. Where's all that money going?" The question made me flush in anger. It was going to Marissa's designer wardrobes, Lillian's fancy dinners, and who knew what else. I realized I needed more than moral support. I needed legal backup. Celeste recommended Lorraine Barker, a retired attorney who occasionally helped former teachers navigate tricky personal disputes. I hesitated. Taking legal steps against my own family felt drastic, but Celeste insisted, "You can't keep letting them walk all over you." "Harriet," I called Lorraine that afternoon. Her calm, steady voice guided me through the potential steps: private investigation, documentation of Toby's neglect, financial exploitation records. My chest tightened. It all sounded so heavy, so final. Yet I knew I had no choice if I wanted to protect Toby. The following week was a calculated waiting game. I acted as though nothing had changed, still preparing Toby's breakfast, doing his laundry, and hugging him tight before he left for school. Quietly, though, I began documenting every instance of neglect. If Toby came home in the same clothes for days without Marissa noticing, I noted it. If Cedric asked me for more money, I jotted down the time and exact words. Lorraine advised me to gather anything that could demonstrate financial exploitation or child endangerment. A court is more likely to respond if you show a pattern of behavior, not just a one-time incident, she explained. Keep your evidence organized. Write dates, times, and details. I felt a pang of sadness each time I jotted something in the spiral notebook I now kept hidden under my bed. How had my life turned into this? I was a retired educator who once spent evenings grading essays and praising children for their kindnesses. Now I was collecting evidence against my own son and daughter-in-law. Nonetheless, Toby remained my beacon of resolve. He was a bright boy with a sweet face, always wanting to read storybooks together. Sometimes he'd ask, "Grandma Harriet, if I do well in school, can I go to a big college someday like Dad did?" It broke my heart every time. My financial support was meant to make sure he had every opportunity, but Marissa and Cedric had turned it into their personal slush fund. Meanwhile, Lillian continued parading around the neighborhood in flamboyant attire, pearl-studded hair clips that sparkled in the sunlight, fancy manicures, and that arrogant tilt of her chin whenever she passed me by. She was convinced I was clueless or too meek to confront them publicly. I nearly lost my composure one morning when she snapped, Good morning, Harriet. Just so you know, Marissa needs a few hundred more for Toby's new school project. Know. The audacity of her demands, laid out with a smug grin, fueled my determination. I finally realized being a loving mother and grandmother didn't mean tolerating abuse. It was time to act decisively, even if it hurt. One crisp autumn afternoon, I was dusting off old photo albums when Toby came bounding through the front door, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Grandma, guess what he exclaimed?" Tugging on my sweater. "I made the school soccer team." He hopped up and down, eager to share details about his new coach and how they'd need team uniforms and shin guards. "Coach says we can't miss practices. Mom said she'd pick me up, but last time she didn't come." His voice trailed off. I forced a bright smile, promising, "This time, I'll make sure someone is there to get you." The last thing I wanted was Toby walking alone in the dark after sports practice. He flashed me a big grin, then sprinted off to his room. My heart clenched. If I didn't intervene, Toby's bright spirit might someday be crushed by this neglect. Later that evening, I tried once again to speak with Cedric, hoping he would care that his child was being left to fend for himself. Cedric, still in his button-down shirt from work, rummaged through the fridge, ignoring the stale odor from the trash that Marissa hadn't bothered to take out. When I gently asked, "Cedric, do you realize Toby was almost alone in the dark last week?" He sighed and rubbed his temple. "Mom, I'm juggling so much. Marissa's under stress, too. Could you handle Toby's soccer drop-offs and pickups?" His reaction felt like a slap. He was shifting the blame, refusing to face the real issue. Marissa wasn't just stressed. She was shirking every responsibility. I took a deep breath. "I understand you have a lot on your plate. But Toby's well-being is non-negotiable. If you two can't manage, I'll do it myself. But I won't keep pretending it's normal for a parent to neglect their child." Cedric's shoulders sagged. He offered a weak apology, but nothing more. No talk of changing things, no mention of Marissa's out-of-control spending. My anger renewed. I wanted to shake him and shout, "Wake up," but fear of fracturing our fragile peace held me back. I'm away down. My confrontation could wait just a little longer until I had everything I needed. Soon after, I decided to pay a discreet visit to Toby's school counselor, Ms. Quinn, a soft-spoken woman with neat bangs and a gentle approach. Ms. Quinn was renowned for her skill in guiding families through difficult times. I confided in her about my worries Toby's repeated late pickups and how it wasn't a one-off mistake. "Ms." Quinn listened empathetically. "I've noticed Toby's been anxious lately," she said. "He looks at the clock often. He's a bright child, but sometimes he seems preoccupied, like he's worried about who will come for him. Have you tried speaking directly to his parents?" My cheeks flushed in embarrassment. What could I say? That I'd confronted them, only to face excuses and gaslighting I have. I managed, but they assure me it won't happen again. "Ms." Quinn glanced at a folder on her desk labeled with Toby's name. "He's a wonderful student. Harriet. If you need anything to protect his well-being, the school can document the late pickups. Sometimes that kind of record helps." Her eyes, kind and bright, told me she understood far more than she was saying aloud. I thanked her and left. On the drive home, my old sedan rattled over potholes, mirroring the turbulence in my heart. I loved Toby as if he were my own child. In a sense, he was at least morally. Yet, for all my devotion, Cedric and Marissa had turned me into a checkbook. Memories of Toby's baby years flooded back, rocking him to sleep when Marissa complained she was exhausted, taking him to the pediatrician whenever he had a cold. Even Toby's current spiky haircut was first tested by me. I'd shown Marissa how cute it looked in a magazine. My phone buzzed just as I parked in our driveway. Celeste's voice came through the line. Urgent. Harriet, you won't believe what I found out about Marissa. One of my yoga buddies says Marissa's been spending mornings at upscale gyms, not job hunting or running errands. I thanked Celeste, my anger intensifying. The puzzle pieces were clicking into place: late salon visits, gym memberships, personal trainers. My $4,000 had become Marissa's all-access pass to a life of leisure, while Toby, her own child, was left behind. That same evening, Marissa strutted into the house loaded with shopping bags. She flashed her meticulously curled brown hair, secured at the top with a shiny gold clip, and an expression that screamed triumph. Dumping the bags on the couch, she ignored me entirely. Moments later, Lillian stormed in behind her, bright red pumps stomping across the hardwood floors. A whiff of expensive perfume trailed after them, mixing unpleasantly with the kitchen's lingering aroma of soup. Well, well, Lillian sneered, setting her monogrammed handbag on the table with a clatter that made Toby jump. Harriet, there's something Marissa wants to tell you. Marissa threw me a sideways glance, then lifted her chin. We need more money for Toby's upcoming field trip. The fees have gone up. I stared at her, unflinching. Field trip. Toby said it was already covered by the school's donation drive. She blinked, her arrogance faltering for just a second. Lillian cut in. Oh, Harriet, dear, you must have misunderstood. It's quite an expensive project. Toby deserves the best. I thought of Toby's trembling voice the previous day when he mentioned that the school was barely charging them anything for the bus fare. I inhaled slowly. Is it really about Toby's best interests? My question hung in the air, and for a split second, Marissa's jaw tightened. Then she regained her mocking smile. Of course it is. You're not accusing me of lying, are you? Lillian chimed in again, flipping her bouffant hair over one shoulder. Marissa is Toby's mother. She knows what he needs better than anyone. If you truly love your grandson, Harriet, you'll give the money without fuss. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned my back and walked into my bedroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the sheer indignation coursing through my veins. I had plenty of documentation, now bank statements, notes on Toby's neglected pickups, a record of their outrageous demands. I was no longer the naive grandmother they believed they could squeeze. Soon, I would unleash everything, and they wouldn't even see it coming. The next morning, Toby peeked into my room, shyly asking if I could style his hair in a new spiky but neat look for school pictures. His sincerity melted me, and I obliged, carefully running a bit of child-friendly gel through his soft brown strands. As I did, he glanced at me in the mirror. Grandma Harriet, do you think Mom and Dad will come to see my photos later? My heart clenched. I'm sure they'll try, I said gently, not wanting to shatter his hopes, but I wondered if they even remembered his photo day amid their constant demands for money. After Toby left, Marissa prowled into the kitchen like a cat that had cornered its prey. She wore a tight athletic outfit, her hair piled into a high ponytail that showed off every highlight she'd recently added at the salon. Listen, Harriet, she said, her tone dripping with artificial politeness. Cedric and I have decided Toby needs extracurricular activities. It's going to cost at least another $2,000 a month. You wouldn't want to hold your grandson back, would you? I suppressed the urge to throw a spatula at her. Which extracurriculars? I asked. She shrugged. Piano, art, maybe some martial arts. You know, keep him well-rounded. Her eyes flicked to Lillian's phone, where I spotted pictures of them trying on designer coats. My suspicions soared. I'll think about it, I said curtly, and I'll need details of these classes. Marissa waved her manicured hand dismissively. Don't worry. We'll handle it. Once she left to hit the gym and outing, I was certain did not involve any errands for Toby. I pulled up my phone and called Lorraine. Our conversation was straightforward. I outlined the newest demand. She asked me to list any potential infidelity or hidden spending evidence. Apparently, Celeste's friend had more leads about Marissa's so-called personal trainer. My head spun at the possibility that this trainer might not just be a fitness instructor. The puzzle was forming a grim image my money funding an affair, while Toby's genuine needs were shoved aside. That day, I vowed to dig deeper, no matter how painful the truth might be. My suspicions weren't unfounded. Over the next few weeks, Celeste discreetly followed Marissa after her gym sessions and sent me photos. The images made my stomach churn. Marissa, laughing with a tall, muscular man, their heads bent close in intimate conversation. Another showed them entering a pricey coffee shop, her eyes alight with flirtation. In yet another, she clung to his arm in the parking lot of a luxury apartment complex, clearly not a public gym. I stared at these digital captures on my phone, tears welling in my eyes. Yes, Marissa was my daughter-in-law, but more importantly, she was Toby's mother. How could she stoop to such a level? How could Cedric, my own son, remain so willfully blind? My trembling finger hovered over the delete button. For an agonizing moment, I considered sparing my family from the fallout, but if I did, Toby would continue to be used as a pawn, and my retirement would become a bottomless ATM for Marissa and that monstrous mother of hers. I saved the images, forwarding them to Lorraine with a message. This is bigger than I expected. I need help. She responded almost instantly. Collect as much as you can. We'll use it in case this goes to court. That evening, Cedric came home late, just as Toby and I were finishing dinner. I noticed Toby's hair was tangled. The gel from his morning style dried awkwardly. Marissa hadn't bothered to help him clean up after school pictures. Cedric slumped in a chair, letting out a weary sigh. "Mom, is dinner still warm?" he asked. I silently reheated some leftover casserole, my heart too heavy for conversation. "How was work?" I asked stiffly. He mumbled something about deadlines. "Have you talked to Marissa about Toby?" A fleeting look of unease crossed his face. "Mom, she's trying her best," he finally said, not meeting my eyes. His words made me snap. "Is she really?" But then I swallowed the rest, remembering that soon, all my carefully collected evidence would speak for itself. Tensions in the house escalated like a pot left to boil without a lid. Lillian's shrill voice echoed through the halls at all hours. "Harriet, you lazy old woman. Don't you care about Toby's future? Why can't you just cooperate?" She flaunted her new high-gloss hair extensions, another sign that my money was funding her vanity. Meanwhile, Marissa gave me the silent treatment unless she was making demands. Cedric tiptoed around the tension, retreating into his small office or burying himself in work. Sometimes I caught him gazing at Toby with a heartbreaking mixture of guilt and love, as though he knew he was failing as a father but couldn't muster the courage to break free from Marissa's manipulations. I, for my part, kept Toby's spirits up. I read to him, cooked simple meals he loved, and even helped him practice soccer drills in the backyard. But each day, my anger grew. The final trigger came when Toby revealed, in his innocent voice, "Grandma Harriet, Mom said she's busy at the salon again and might not make it to my next soccer match. Dad is always working, too. Will you come?" I almost crushed the glass I was holding. A child's soccer match might not seem like the biggest deal to some parents, but to Toby, it was everything. No child should face such consistent indifference. That night, I typed up a thorough summary of every instance of neglect in a chronological timeline, attached photos from Celeste, saved screenshots of social media posts that showed Marissa flaunting her so-called gym life with her trainer, and forwarded them to Lorraine. The next morning, she called me, Harriet. "This is enough to make a strong legal case," she said. "If Cedric is complicit in misusing your funds, you could file a civil suit against both of them. More importantly, you might consider seeking custody of Toby. It's drastic, but child endangerment and the mother's affairs can weigh heavily in court." My heart pounded, going for custody of my own grandson. My mind reeled at the possibility. Still, Toby's well-being was my top priority. If ensuring that meant stepping into the legal arena, I would do it without hesitation. Before I made any final decisions, I needed clarity on Cedric's stance. Did he still love Marissa? Or was he just too scared to confront her if he wanted to protect Toby? He had to show it. One quiet evening, I caught him alone in the living room, his once meticulously short hair now looking disheveled. He stared at old photographs on the mantle, images of his father, of me in my teaching days, and of a baby Toby with a laugh so pure it could melt the coldest heart. "Cedric," I began softly, "we need to talk." He stiffened but nodded, unable to hide the dread in his eyes. I walked closer, lowering my voice. "I know about Marissa's personal trainer. I know she's been using the money I give for Toby on shopping sprees and other things. Are you really okay with that?" He looked at me, tears glistening in his eyes. "Mom, I'm just exhausted. Marissa has me cornered. She threatened that if I don't keep giving her what she wants, she'll take Toby away. She said I'd never see him again. I, I, I'm so afraid of losing my son." A wave of pity hit me, followed by stern resolve. "Cedric, if you let this continue, you'll lose him anyway. He's already being neglected. If something happens to Toby, or if Marissa pushes you to the point of bankruptcy, how will that help you be a father to him?" He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "I've been a coward," he whispered, voice shaking. "I know that. You taught me better. Mom, but My tone softened. "Son, you can change. You can protect Toby, but you have to stand with me. No more $4,000 checks. No more letting Marissa and Lillian dominate this house." He looked up, a flicker of determination in his eyes, but also unmistakable fear. "I'll try," he said, "but you know how she is." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll do this step by step. I already have a lawyer. I'm prepared to fight back. Cedric, if you're with me, we can end this. But you have to be certain, or she'll tear you apart in court." He swallowed hard, nodding. A silent understanding passed between us. He was on board tentatively. Whether or not he'd hold firm once Marissa discovered our plan was another story entirely. Within days, the first confrontation arrived. Marissa noticed I'd stopped placing cash in the floral envelope I usually left on the dining table each month. She stormed into my bedroom unannounced, Toby's soccer ball in hand, her hair in a frenzied mess, as if she'd just come from the gym and hadn't bothered to fix it. "What's going on, Harriet? Where's the money?" I calmly looked up from the novel I was reading. "I'm done giving you $4,000 a month. It's over. Marissa." She gaped, then erupted in laughter. "You done. Don't be ridiculous. You need us. Remember who provides your precious grandson? If you dare cut us off, I'll take Toby and move out so fast your head will spin." I refused to let my composure waver. "Move out if you wish, but the house belongs to me. My name is on the deed, not yours or Cedric's. And if you try to keep Toby from me, I'll see you in court. For a moment, her bravado faltered. Then Lillian's voice cut through the tension like a shrieking siren. She barged in behind Marissa, wearing heavy makeup and brandishing that same garish LV bag. "Is that how you speak to my daughter? Harriet," she screeched. "We're family, and you owe us. We're raising Toby. The least you can do is support us properly." My blood pressure soared. "I owe you nothing," I snapped. "You've already exploited me for too long. I will still provide for Toby's real needs, but not a dime more for your luxuries." Lillian advanced, her face contorted in rage. "Then you better watch your back. We'll smear your name across this community. Yadim. We'll tell everyone you abuse your grandchild." "Think carefully," I said quietly. Stepping forward, "Defamation has legal consequences, and I have proof of your blackmail attempts. Try me." Their faces fell. They turned on their heels, charging out of my bedroom as if they had to escape the glare of my resolve. For the first time, I felt I had truly seized control, but I also braced myself, knowing full well they'd come at me with everything they had. True to their threat, Lillian and Marissa embarked on a vicious smear campaign in the neighborhood. Overnight, rumors spread like wildfire. According to their twisted narrative, I was a senile retiree hoarding money, refusing to help Toby's education, and even verbally abusing them behind closed doors. I found out when Ms. Roberts, a neighbor with short cropped hair dyed a metallic purple, caught me on my morning walk. She gave me a worried look. "Harriet, I've heard some unsettling things." "Are you all right?" I explained the situation calmly, hoping to dispel the lies. While Ms. Roberts nodded sympathetically, I could sense her lingering doubt. Lies, once sown, are tough to uproot entirely. Marissa, meanwhile, refused to do any housework, garbage piled up, unwashed dishes stacked in the sink. Toby's laundry sat neglected for days. Cedric, stressed from work and the tension at home, looked like he was on the verge of a breakdown. One evening, I found him hunched over a pile of legal paperwork Lorraine had prepared, his face buried in his hands. "Mom," he murmured, "I'm scared of what Marissa and Lillian might do next." I patted his shoulder gently. "Stand firm. If we cave now, they'll continue exploiting us. Toby deserves better." Late that night, my cell phone buzzed a text from Celeste. "I have more intel for you. Something about Marissa's accounts. Let's meet tomorrow." My pulse quickened. The next morning, she showed me screenshots indicating Marissa had been receiving sporadic money transfers from another account, possibly her trainer friend. The amounts were suspiciously high, and the references included cryptic terms like rent or utilities. It looked like hush money, or maybe financial dealings to facilitate their affair. Armed with this new evidence, I looped in Lorraine. She was steadfast in her approach. "This is enough for a decisive legal push. You could petition for guardianship of Toby if you prove consistent neglect. Cedric would likely have to file for divorce to strengthen his custody claim. Otherwise, Marissa can drag Toby into an environment that's financially and emotionally toxic." My chest tightened. Divorce, custody battles. But I knew Toby was worth every ounce of the turmoil that lay ahead. Events snowballed quickly. Cedric, at last, saw the writing on the wall. One night, after Marissa brazenly disappeared for hours with no explanation, he sat at the kitchen table, eyes hollow, and whispered, "Mom, I'm filing for divorce. I can't keep pretending." My heart clenched with a mixture of relief and sorrow. I had never wanted to see my son's marriage collapse, but this union was beyond repair. The morning after he told me, Cedric broke the news to Marissa. I expected an explosive argument, but the confrontation surpassed even my worst predictions. She hurled insults, threatened to accuse him of spousal abuse, and declared she'd make sure Toby never saw his father again. Lillian joined in, screeching at the top of her lungs about how she would destroy me in court. Winston, Lillian's silent partner, her husband, lurked in the doorway, gaze averted, as if too ashamed to defend their theatrics. Cedric, for once, did not cower. "Enough," he said in a tired but resolved tone. "I've saved screenshots of your trainer conversations, your bank transfers, and your messages belittling my mother. I'll request full custody of Toby based on neglect." Marissa lunged at him, her manicured nails aimed at his face, but Lillian pulled her back, whispering something fiercely into her ear. The pair stomped out, slamming the door. Toby peeked out from his bedroom, eyes wide with fear. I rushed to him, hugging him tight. "It's okay," I whispered, forcing a steady tone. "Everything will be all right, Toby." But Toby's trembling voice asked, "Are Mom and Dad getting a divorce?" Tears rimmed his eyes. I swallowed hard, unable to form words that wouldn't be a lie. Cedric tried to comfort him, but Toby pushed him away, burying his face in my shoulder. My heart ached for the child torn between parents whose conflict was now an ugly public feud. Outside, I could hear Lillian's shrill voice on the phone. "We'll sue them. Harriet's house or not, we'll get that money." She threatened a legal firestorm, but I had Lorraine and Celeste on my side and an arsenal of evidence. War had been declared, and we were ready. When the court summons came, I wasn't surprised. Marissa and Lillian alleged financial abuse of me exploiting them, ironically, and also claimed mental cruelty. Lorraine read the complaint, then rolled her eyes. "It's baseless, but we'll have to show up and refute it." "Yes." The court date was set for a Monday morning. I wore a modest gray pantsuit, my silver hair combed neatly, determined to project calm dignity. Cedric, looking pale but grimly determined, accompanied me. Toby stayed home with a friend of mine, so he wouldn't witness the ugliness firsthand. In the hearing, Marissa showed up in a flashy outfit, tight skirt, high heels, hair blowing out in a dramatic cascade. Lillian stood behind her, decked in flamboyant jewelry, as if it were some twisted social event rather than a legal proceeding. Their lawyer, a man with impeccably slicked back hair, tried to paint me as a stingy mother-in-law who hoarded money and forced them into desperate measures. The gall. Lorraine calmly presented our side, a binder of evidence proving the monthly transfers of $4,000, Toby's repeated late pickups documented by the school, Celeste's photos of Marissa cavorting with her trainer, and screenshots of the duo mocking me and openly plotting to squeeze me for more cash. When images of Toby walking home alone were shown a tiny figure crossing a busy intersection, a hush fell over the room. Marissa's expression cracked. Lillian muttered something under her breath. Even their slick lawyer looked uncomfortable. Cedric spoke next, voice trembling yet resolute. "I love my son. I wanted my marriage to work, but the deception and neglect had gone too far. My mother's support was meant for Toby's education. Marissa used it for personal luxuries. I have evidence here." He lifted his smartphone, showing messages from Marissa bragging about buying designer handbags with my money. The judge's gaze flicked from me to Marissa. It was evident whose side the facts supported. While the official decision would take more than one hearing, we'd made a compelling case. As I left the courthouse, a mixture of relief and anxiety washed over me. This was far from over, but the tide had turned in our favor. Back home, the battlefront shifted to a tense wait. Toby was the one bright spot in this turmoil. Each evening, he'd show me his homework, a wobbly attempt at cursive writing, or excitedly recount soccer practice. With Cedric no longer enabling Marissa's demands, The atmosphere in the house changed. Marissa and Lillian sulked, glared, or shouted, but their intimidation lost its edge. I refused to engage in arguments. I walked away whenever they tried to provoke me. Celeste continued to be my rock, checking in daily. "They're desperate," she said one afternoon. "A friend of mine saw Lillian trying to rally neighbors against you." But after seeing the pictures of Toby alone, people are less inclined to believe her. Indeed, the neighborhood's opinion was shifting. A few neighbors even offered me quiet words of support at the grocery store. "We're sorry for believing those rumors," said Ms. Blake, an elderly woman with kind eyes. "Toby deserves better from his mother." Marissa, however, didn't back down. One night, she cornered me in the hallway. Her face twisted in rage. "How dare you drag me to court, you old hag?" She spat. "You think you've won. Cedric won't get custody. I'll make sure Toby hates you both." My stomach churned at her threat. I clenched my fist, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Toby is not a weapon. Marissa," she sneered, tossing her hair back. "Everything is a weapon if you use it right." Then she stormed off. After that, I heard her slamming drawers in her bedroom, possibly packing, possibly destroying something. Who knew? Meanwhile, Lorraine advised Cedric and me to file additional documents, including statements from Toby's teachers and the counselor Ms. Quinn. We asked Ms. Quinn for a formal letter describing Toby's experiences at school, and she complied, delicately detailing instances of Toby's anxiety related to pickups. When we read Ms. Quinn's letter, Cedric visibly paled. "I had no idea it was this bad," he murmured, tears brimming in his eyes. I failed him. I rested a hand on his shoulder. "We're trying to fix it now. That's all we can do." The final court hearing approached faster than expected. Stress wrapped around me like a vice, but Toby's unwavering smile each morning gave me strength. On the day of, Cedric and I entered the courthouse side by side. Toby once again left safely with a friend. Lillian, Winston, and Marissa arrived together. Marissa's once luxurious hair looked unkempt, and her face was drawn. Perhaps the meltdown of her lavish lifestyle was catching up to her. Lillian, though, still wore a flamboyant scarf, chin raised defiantly. The judge, an older woman with a strict bun and reading glasses, listened as our lawyers presented final arguments. Lorraine reiterated key points. My $4,000 monthly support had never been used for Toby's benefit, as evidenced by both financial records and testimony from Toby's school officials. Meanwhile, I had contributed daily to Toby's upbringing, including essentials like food, clothing, and actual tuition. Cedric's attorney focused on Marissa's neglect, her affair, and her threats to bar Toby from his father if the money flow stopped. Marissa's lawyer tried to spin a sob story. She was a mother who faced emotional neglect from Cedric, pushing her to seek comfort elsewhere. They claimed Toby always had adequate care and that my involvement was purely voluntary, thus I couldn't rescind support without harming Toby. But Cedric stood and firmly recounted Toby's repeated late pickups and how he, the father, was never informed about half the programs Marissa had claimed Toby needed. The judge flipped through photographs showing Toby's plight walking alone down the street, also the screenshots of Marissa's text mocking my pension. When it was my turn to speak, my voice shook. "I'm Harriet Lawson, Toby's grandmother. I taught in public schools for 30 years. My husband died young, and I raised Cedric alone. I never imagined I'd see the day when my son's family would exploit my life savings, especially under the guise of Toby's welfare. This child is everything to me. But Marissa and Lillian have lied and threatened to keep me from Toby. I'm here to protect him, no matter what." The judge's eyes softened slightly. Then she asked Cedric, "Do you feel capable of providing Toby a stable home?" Cedric's answer was resolute. Yes, Your Honor. With my mother's support, I do. When the judge finally delivered her decision, the room felt so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. She ruled that Cedric should have primary custody of Toby. Marissa, found complicit in financial misconduct and child neglect, was granted only supervised visitation rights until she could prove she had Toby's best interests at heart. The judge also explicitly recognized my rightful ownership of the house. Any attempt by Marissa or Lillian to stay beyond a certain date could be contested by law. Marissa's face twisted in disbelief. Lillian launched into a tirade, accusing the court of bias, but the judge's stern warning to maintain decorum shut her down. Winston looked as though he'd rather vanish than stand beside his screaming wife and daughter. As for Cedric, he exhaled audibly, relief flashing across his tired features. When we stepped out of the courtroom, the crisp San Francisco breeze greeted us. I paused, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. Cedric turned to me with glistening eyes. Mom, thank you, he whispered. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stood your ground. I hugged him, tears welling in my own eyes. We did this together, for Toby. Let's make sure we never put him through something like this again. Outside, Marissa and Lillian gathered in a corner, presumably plotting their next move. A part of me feared they'd orchestrate some elaborate revenge, but at that moment, I realized a fundamental truth I had already faced their worst. No matter what rumors they spread or theatrics they performed, they couldn't override a legal verdict. A gentle hand touched my shoulder. Turning, I found Celeste standing there, her curly salt and pepper hair shimmering under the midday sun. You won, Harriet, she said softly, her lips curving in a supportive smile. Now go home and give Toby the life he deserves. I nodded, words failing me. Tension drained from my body like water down a spout. All that remained was an aching gratitude for Celeste, for Lorraine, and for the glimmer of hope that Toby's future would be safe and happy at last. The next few days were a whirlwind of logistical matters. Marissa was served an eviction notice by the court to vacate our home within a specified time frame. She dragged her feet, refused to pack properly, and threatened one final showdown. But Lillian ended up ferrying her out in a flurry of suitcases and rage. They slammed the door so hard the hinges rattled. Toby, who had grown somewhat accustomed to his mother's unpredictable moods, simply watched from the safety of my arms. Cedric was left with an odd mixture of sorrow and liberation. He took a week off work to handle the custody paperwork, finalize the divorce, and arrange Toby's new routines. We also took the opportunity to tidy up the house, discarding the trash that Marissa and Lillian had conveniently left behind. Toby's room became our top priority. We repainted it a cheerful green, set up a new study desk, and hung up shelves for his soccer trophies, even if they were small participation awards. They meant the world to him. Every night, Toby insisted I read him a bedtime story. Occasionally, he'd ask about his mom. Is she okay, he'd say, fiddling with his spiky bangs. I'd reassure him gently. She's fine, sweetheart. She just needs time to figure things out. Although he accepted my words, I knew he felt a pang of sadness. No matter how Marissa had acted, she was still his mother. Meanwhile, rumors around the neighborhood started fading. Ms. Roberts and Ms. Blake, once swayed by Lillian's lies, apologized for their initial coldness. Word got around that a judge had ruled in our favor, and even those who once whispered about me now offered small smiles or greetings. I didn't need their approval, but it was a relief not to feel like a pariah in my own community. On the first morning without Marissa in the house, I woke up to the soft hum of the fridge and the faint chirping of birds outside. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't waiting for the next demand or the next insult. I got out of bed and made a simple breakfast omelets, toast, and fresh fruit for Toby and Cedric. And as we sat around the kitchen table, Toby's bright laughter filling the air, I realized that I had reclaimed something priceless, my dignity. Life didn't instantly become perfect. Toby occasionally asked why his mom wasn't around more often. Cedric wrestled with guilt and regret, especially at night, when he'd recall the small signals of trouble he had ignored for too long, and I had to adjust to living with the knowledge that I'd almost lost my entire pension to a shameless scheme. Yet, for all these challenges, our home felt lighter, more honest. Every day, I accompanied Toby to school, greeting his teachers and making sure his after-school soccer practices were scheduled properly. Cedric rearranged his work hours to pick Toby up some days, determined to show he could be the responsible father Toby deserved. Over time, Toby's anxious glances at the school gate lessened, replaced by excited waves whenever he spotted one of us. One late afternoon, I received a surprise visit from Winston, Lillian's husband, usually a silent, withdrawn figure. He stood at the door with a tired expression, his own short hair in disarray, as though he'd been wrestling with inner turmoil. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he stammered. I never approved of how Lillian and Marissa behaved, but I didn't know how to stop them. I hope Toby's okay. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, but another part recognized the sorrow in his eyes. Thank you, I said stiffly, not inviting him in. He gave a short nod and turned to leave. Shoulders slumped. That brief encounter reminded me that even among the enemy, there were complexities. Still, it didn't erase what Marissa and Lillian had done. At Toby's next soccer game, Cedric and I watched from the sidelines as he sprinted across the field, chasing the ball with pure joy. My heart swelled, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. This was what I'd fought for, the freedom for Toby to thrive without being weighed down by his mother's manipulations. Afterward, Toby ran to us, grinning ear to ear. "Did you see my goal, Grandma?" he exclaimed. I nodded enthusiastically, ruffling his hair. "I sure did. Toby, I'm so proud of you." That night, Cedric and I quietly toasted our new beginning. We might not have wealth, but we had peace and each other. In the weeks that followed, we finalized the divorce process. Marissa's visits to Toby were set on a supervised schedule, and though Toby sometimes seemed subdued after seeing her, I made sure to provide extra warmth and attention. Cedric continued to be proactive, ensuring Toby's homework was done and that he had everything he needed for soccer. Together, we formed a supportive team around Toby, something he should have had all along. One evening, after Toby fell asleep, Cedric joined me in the living room. A gentle lamplight illuminated our faces. "Mom," he said softly, "I can't thank you enough for standing up for Toby and for me. I was blind for so long." His once weary eyes now held a quiet determination. He had trimmed his hair more neatly, symbolizing a fresh start, I suppose. I reached out, squeezing his hand. "It's in the past now. Let's focus on moving forward. We do what we can to heal." A wave of relief coursed through me. This was the life I'd longed for, a drama-free home where Toby could study, play, and be a happy child. Lillian's daily harassment gone. The endless guilt trips and manipulative lies disintegrated. Even though we'd come through a brutal storm of deceit, we'd emerged stronger. I settled into my rocking chair with a cup of mint tea, letting the events of the past months wash over me. My short, wavy silver hair caught the lamp's glow, and I couldn't help but feel a certain pride. I might be a grandmother on a modest pension, but I wasn't helpless. I had drawn a line in the sand, and despite the heartbreak of seeing my son's marriage crumble, We'd salvaged what truly mattered: Toby's safety, our family's dignity, and a chance at a healthy future. As I drifted to sleep that night, the final thought that crossed my mind was a soothing one. I was free of the relentless demands for money, free of the toxic environment that had nearly crushed my spirit. Cedric and Toby were free, too, to rebuild and grow. Whatever came next, I was ready with open arms and a heart filled with hope. Thank you so much for spending your time here at her Fireside Stories. What an incredible journey we've witnessed with Harriet, who stood bravely against deception and greed, ultimately restoring peace and safety to her family. Did Harriet's courage inspire you? Would you have handled things differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspectives and experiences. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell to ensure you don't miss out on more compelling stories that reflect real-life resilience and the strength of family bonds. Until next time, keep your heart warm and your fires burning bright.